Arch will be fine. Don't you think? Like, I don't know. Like just being in the stadium, like I know he missed some throws, but I actually thought like based on like the amount that was getting thrown at him. And you think about this, right? There's probably a handful of first round picks on Ohio State's defense.
Yeah.
And this is a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator who like you don't have any college tape on him. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So you think about like an ultra talented defense with an ultra experienced coordinator coming in and there's no tape. And so I personally think Arch is going to be fine. I think like it is like pretty hilarious hearing the same people who are building him up to being the first pick in the draft after 2 starts against UTSA and Mississippi State, to be the number 1 pick in the draft, or now the people who are calling him overrated and tearing him down. But I guess that's the way that I think that's just the environment that you and I work in now, right? So here we are.
I've always thought, and I have my jokes about him. If anyone wants to understand him a little bit better, I would highly suggest reading Mike Rosenberg from our magazine. He had a piece on Arch in the football preview issue about how uncomfortable he is with his place in the world in terms of being a famous person that has not earned any bit of it, and how uncomfortable he's been with this idea for the totality of his life. And so
it's like the whole famous for being famous thing, right? Like it's like
right.
the Kardashian thing.
Right. And so I'm, for an NFL Sunday, if Tom Brady has a bad game and he's 38 and okay, that's fair game for me. Right. I never thought, and I will tease Arch because I think there's a good natured teasing that can happen there. But I do think like that there is something that needs to be done in terms of allowing this kid to grow up in football in a somewhat sane way. And of course, a large swath of America is not going to heed to that, but that's kind of my personal code, which is this kid's going to take his lumps, and Texas probably should have never been number 1 to begin with. Let's be real. I mean, Ohio State.
Their defense is really good, though. I mean, like I think it was just 2 really good defenses. Like that's what I mean. That's the way I look at it. Like I talk to scouts about. They obviously know where I went to school, so like when you're kind of shooting the shit with them before a training camp practice or whatever, it'll come up. And like the one thing I got from scouts who'd been through those 2 places over the course of the summer was like the defense was absolutely kicking the offense's ass in both spots,
Yeah.
And so like I went in, I was asked on a radio show last week, like, what do you expect? I'm like, I expect a rock fight. I think it's gonna be 14-10. And I was pretty close,
Yeah.
It's just sort of like, I think that was sort of the game that the way the 2 rosters are, I think that game was expected. I also think like, don't you think all of this sort of validates the way that Cooper raised Arch?
Yeah. Oh, right? Totally. Because,
I mean, like I'll say this, like I've never met Arch Manning, but everything I've heard about him has been overwhelmingly positive. And I was out to dinner, during the combine with Quinn Ewers, and Quinn Ewers had every reason in the world to hate Arch Manning.
Sure.
Right. Every reason. He's coming in as the number 1 recruit with that last name. And like last year, when Quinn was playing through injury, there was a lot of like, well, should Arch be playing? Should Arch be playing? So there's every reason in the world to hate him.
Yeah.
And Quinn loves him.
Yeah.
And that to me says a lot about Arch Manning. You know what I mean? Like when I heard Quinn talk about Arch in those terms, I was like, all right, like, so I don't know if this kid's going to grow into being the number 1 pick in the draft, but it seems like he's a pretty good guy. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think like there were things in that game where you saw, and this comes back to what I'd heard, like that this was going to be a tough go for both young quarterbacks. I actually think like he made some high level throws in the 4th quarter, the touchdown, the one down the sideline to the tight end in the last possession. Like it wasn't perfect, but like, I think he showed some resilience and some toughness. And, he made some things happen with his feet. I think he's going to be fine. Like, now, does that mean he's going to be the number one pick in the draft? I don't know. And no one could have known that either after 2 starts last year against two of the worst teams on Texas' schedule. No one could have known that last year. Like, coming out of last year, like, people putting him at the top of the draft. Like, can you think of one other example of a player with 2 college starts being projected to be the number one pick in the draft?
No. And that's the thing, like, and maybe other kids don't get this benefit of the doubt, and maybe I feel like oddly protective because I'm in a different place in my life than some of these other fans or people who are consuming this, but he's 21. You know what I mean? He's 21. And while I will say this, there was a true freshman at Notre Dame who was cooking at quarterback this weekend, and was a little bit younger than that, and I think will be.
No, he's a redshirt freshman, isn't he?
Redshirt freshman. I'm sorry, yeah. Who I met when he was in 8th grade at a quarterback showcase. By the way, holy balls, does that make me feel?
Wait, you met CJ Carr when he was in 8th grade?
In 8th grade at a quarter, I was at like a version of this Elite 11 thing, and he was there throwing for scouts.
Lloyd Carr's grandson.
And I talked to Lloyd about him not too long ago. I actually got a chance to catch up with him, and it's crazy to me that I think back at myself at 21, just like barely evading arrest for like stealing a yard sign, and then we have these kids who are like operating high-level college football teams, and I'm just like, after our one game for Arch Manning, I'm like, all right, I'll check in with you in week 6. I'm sure you're going to be fine.
I mean, here's the other thing too. Like, I've over the last couple of years, I've kind of like trained myself to like look at these things a little bit differently too, and like there's that whole thing like where. I think when Brock Purdy had the success he had as a rookie with the Niners, it caused a lot of like teams to go back and look at how they're evaluating quarterbacks. And a lot of teams leaned in to the experience thing, and like that baseline of 25 starts, like that you should have at least 25 starts under your belt before you go into the NFL. Now, that's not been the case with everybody, but it has been a pretty decent marker for success versus failure among guys going from college to the pros as far as their readiness. So why is it 25 starts? Well, the reason why is because you're going to, over that time, accumulate a library in your head of things that you've seen, different coverages, different looks, different ways of teams attacking you. You're also going to have gone through this process of teams learning you, right? Like, so now a defensive coordinator is going to have 5 games of tape on you. They're going to have 10 games of tape on you. And they're going to learn about these little things that they can do to pick at you and to make you uncomfortable, and having you play left-handed, so to speak, right? Like, they're going to force you to do things that maybe you're not at your best at. And can you counterpunch? And there's this process, this game of cat and mouse that every quarterback has to go through. And after 2 starts where Arch Manning was barely touched, how is anybody going to know what Arch Manning is going to be, just as not even as an NFL player, but as a prospect, as an NFL pro? You don't know. And that was why it was always asinine. The idea that, like you're projecting him to be the number 1 pick in the draft. Now, because of because of the level of recruit he was, because of the talent he has, if if his last name was Smith, Texas people would be excited about like what he could do. Right?
I think so. I just pulled it up again.
But
yeah.
There wouldn't be this national hysteria over it.
No.
There wouldn't be this projection of him being a first round pick. There'd be like, okay, this kid can really become something. And that's what he'd shown us. Like, he'd shown us like he really has some ability to become something, but we don't know much more beyond that. And he'll learn from this. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I wrote it in May. I think it's just insane to have this idea that this guy was the number 1 pick in the draft after 2 starts. And that is not his fault. He may become that, but no one knows after 2 starts against a directional school and the worst team in the SEC.
Yeah. And I just pulled it up again just to make sure that I'm not, because you watch it and then, you watch the every throw breakdown, and, I had it pulled up again. Okay. Did he miss some throws? Yeah. But was this kid throwing into the teeth of quite possibly the best defense in the country deep into the game, and was Sark, who is one of the best offensive coaches in college football and possibly an NFL coach in 2 years. It, it, he did not take, he did not rein him in at all. And I feel like that's where we're at, where I think if all of a sudden we did a little bit of what Notre Dame did with CJ Carr actually this weekend, and it's like, okay, now it's getting too much. We're just going to throw the same wide receiver screen 11 goddamn times until it gets picked off. And
Right.
this wasn't the case for Texas. I mean, he's throwing it deep, he's pushing the ball downfield, and that's a showcase of a good coach having faith in a quarterback. That's where they're at. I mean, to me, the result doesn't matter. I mean, Peyton Manning, perfect example, had like 19 of those games to start his NFL career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he threw, I think, what did he throw? 28 interceptions his first NFL season. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm happy that in a lot of ways, I think this is the best thing that can happen. They're still going to make the playoffs, and we'll get to see Arch in the postseason. But this can put the hype train on ice for a second and just allow this kid to develop normally and to have 3 or 4 normal games against whoever the hell Texas plays this year before we have to start doing this massive indictment of his future. And so in a lot of ways, I thought it was good, because if you beat Ohio State, then it gets completely out of control, right? And then it gets completely ridiculous. And so,
if he'd come back in that game,
right?
And like, how close was that to happening? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, Caleb Downs made an incredible play to like, and I thought like, if you watched his last throw, Archman's last throw, like he was getting hit. He's getting pulled to the ground by a defensive lineman. He still muscled the ball to the tight end. And Caleb Downs, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick, right? Like stops him a yard, like makes an unbelievable individual play to stop the tight end, like a yard short of the sticks. Yeah. If Texas finds a way to score there, ties the game, maybe forces overtime, we're talking about this in a completely different way. And they made a real run at it at the end, which I think says something about what the kids got upstairs. But I thought this. So our old colleague, Ross Dellinger, who does a great job covering college football, is at Yahoo now.
Yeah.
This quote from Michael Taft, who's like a safety on the team, one of Arch's best friends, I thought said everything. This was from I think a month or two ago, right? So Taft said, he told me, I can't wait till I throw a pick and everyone goes from I'm the best player in the world to the worst player. That quote shows so much self-awareness.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it shows so much self-awareness. And like, when I read that quote, I'm like, the kid gets it. The kid understands. You know what I mean?
And he gets that it's not fair. Like you already get that it's not fair, you know? And then
he's not being a jerk about it. Like he's not being a jerk about it. He's accepting it and he understands. Like, I think that there's a reality to it though. Like he understands he's had advantages in his life because of his last name, and like, you know, he's aware of it, you know, and he's also aware of, you know, what's going to happen, and accepting of the fact that a lot of people that were building him up again to be the first pick in the draft or have spent the last few days ripping him down.